Paper clay basics. Paper clay is an amazing type of clay. It dries in the air, and these are two different types that you have. This is an American kind, and this is a Chinese kind. Now, this clay is amazing. It is actually created from taking paper, taking that pulp, grinding it all up, and then putting it together with a binder. And then it looks like this. It's non-toxic, it's air dry, there's no need to wedge it, there's no air bubbles, it can't explode because it's just air dry. Now there's different kinds, and at different kinds what you need to look for is the particle size. So the Chinese has roughly bigger particles, so when I have the surface done, you'll see a little bit of the difference. This is the surface here, and on this you can see that this is a little bit smoother, and this kind is this one. You'll also notice the difference in colors. When it is wet, it's going to look more of a cream color. Then these two are dry, but the difference is that this is this brand and this is this. This has finer particles, so the surface is smoother and you can get a little more detail. And this is also whiter. There's a slightly different color between the two. So when you're buying these things, those are the things you look for. Particle size for detail, and you look for color. Now, after that, we need to look at how it tears apart. This is paper, so when you tear this clay apart, it kind of rips like paper. So we're going to keep it together as much as we can. And I'm taking this and I can put it into a sphere like that. I can also take it and do the normal thing, making a coil. So I can either go like this to make a coil, but that's uneven, or I can start with a ball. I always start with a ball. And then I can go like this. And that's better. You can see how even that is. But if I really want to make this nice and smooth, a really interesting thing to do is to take something that's flat, anything that's flat. I can take that. I can even take the thing of paper clay. And look how much more even that gets. So taking something flat, a flat piece of plastic, the bottom of a box, anything like that will make your coils a lot more consistent. The other things that I can do is I can start with a sphere and I can make a slab like this. I can either use my hand to do that, but that's very inconsistent. So I like to use a roller. I go from the inside out, then I pick it up, rotate it 90 degrees and flip it. And then I do it the same. And that keeps it from sticking on the table. That 90-degree flip, that's what keeps it from sticking it to everything. Next, on this, I am going to show you how to do some subtractive cutting. So I can go into this, and I'm going to use different tools. These are called mini loop tools, and there are lots of different sizes, and you can go in and carve away. Now, whenever you carve, you're going to get this little piece in there. Every time you go to carve, you've got to clean that out. So I'm going to go in there, clean that out, and then go in for the next pass. Each one makes a different surface. If I use this one, you see it makes a much wider cut. That's one subtractive method, using loop tools. Another thing that you can use is you can do something like this and cut. This is a modeling tool. Modeling tools are good for texture. They're good for cutting away clay. They're textures. This is fish scales. I'm just pressing this tip in, and you can see how the fish scale happens. I can also use the other side to make like a cross hatching or a hatching mark. This part will make dots in here if I want to. This is a good one for like a brick look. So all of these have different types of textures that they make. The other tools that I use very commonly with this kind of clay are needle tools, or also called a pin tool. And in here, I'm carving in. I can carve lines, I can hatch. But the thing you have to be careful is you have to always clean off that tip and don't poke yourself because this is very sharp. And also, I don't want a lot of clay boogers. And you see the lines here? You see how they're inconsistent? You see that little thing that comes off there? That right there. That's a clay booger. That's what I call it. And that looks really not nice. That's very, very bad craftsmanship. So when I'm making lines, I try not to use that. I use one of two other things. This is a scribe tool. If you look carefully, there's a little ball on the end of this. It is not totally pointed. Both of these sides have a tiny, tiny little sphere at the end. And what it allows you to do is to go in and create a line that's nice, and you can go in once or twice so that it goes in a little deeper, but you'll see it doesn't create the boogers. You see how I went in there a couple of times? If I just press in really hard, it's going to mess the clay up. So if I want to make a line with this scribe tool, I go very lightly a couple of times, and it's nice and perfect the first time. Another way to make lines is to use one of my favorite tools. These are called shaper tools. Okay, some people also call them blenders. These are rubber tipped, and if you look, these will move. Now don't do this yourself. I'm just showing you because they bend. They will break if you push them too far, but they're different sizes, and they move with the clay so that when you're making a line, you see there's no booger whatsoever there. They're also really great for smoothing things over. I can just erase my lines. I like this one is really good for erasing. So these are the blender tools. You can also make textures with these, by the way. They're very good for blending all kinds of things. Now, if I really don't want to keep this, I can use one of the blender tools, or I can even use a modeling tool and erase. Get most of that texture off of there, and then to get the surface totally even, I have water, and I take a little bit of water either on a brush or my finger, and I go like this, and I have a brand new smooth surface. I just let that dry like a couple of seconds so that I can go back in and texture it without stuff sticking to it. Okay, now this is done with. And now what I have to do is I have to rehydrate this. To rehydrate this, I don't want too much water or it'll stick. So a lot of people make the mistake is they take wet fingers and then they start doing this and then they're like going like, and then it's like all over them. You don't have to do that. Let me show you a little handy hack. You take this, press a little bit in here, and you can drop some water in the center, or you can spray it with a spray bottle in the center. Then I'm going to go like this and fold it so I'm trapping that water in it. And then I'm just going to move it around, and I'm going to keep folding it in half, and then fold it in half the other way. And then I'm going to keep moving it. And what it does is that water in the center absorbs, and then I can tell that my clay is good. Now here, how can you tell if it's good moisture? If I go like this and it's a mess, and I go like this and press to make a ball, and I don't see cracks, that means it's good. Let me show you this. See how it's got all those little cracks and stuff? This is more dry. I pull this apart. It's really dry. I pull this apart. Look at how it's a little plasticky first. This is the good moisture. Pulling apart really easy and cracking is dry. Next, if you have dry hands, you either want to use lotion ahead of time, or once in a while, you might even want to just put a little bit of water on your hands or a little water on the clay. So you've got to be careful. Now we're going to combine two pieces, right? To combine two pieces, I don't have to totally slip and score. I have to score and I have to almost slip, but it's not the kind of messy stuff you're used to with the other clay. So I am going to combine this piece on top of this, but I want this to be, I'm going to make this a sphere. So I'm going to take a sphere, rotate it around 4 times, and that's how I can make a cube. Okay, so now I've got this cube. I want to put it on top of this piece. Now instead of scoring the whole thing, I'm going to go and I'm going to here, I'm just going to trace it with a needle tool roughly. Now I want these two to go together, so I've got to make them rough. This is why. This is the Mrs. Diggs method. If you go like this, you can move your hands like this. Go ahead, try it. Put your hands together like this and move them. They slide real easy. Now go like this a little bit. Yeah, they're harder, but they still slide a little. Now go like this. You can't move them. So this is what we want to do with the clay. We want to create like a Velcro surface. So don't try to be, oh, it's perfect, perfect cross-hatching. No, you want this to be a mess. You want it to be rough, okay? You don't want to destroy your piece, but you want it to be rough. And you want it rough on both sides. So now I have scored. This is scoring. And instead of slip, I'm just going to take some water and drop it on. I don't want to mess up my texture, so don't put it on here and rub it in because that gets rid of the whole bumpy Velcro thing. Gonna leave that on for a couple of seconds, and then I'm going to press it together gently. Now, this sticks a lot better, but you'll notice it still can come off. So there's two ways to do this. You have to blend it. You can use a modeling tool, or you can use a blender, like one of those really nice blender tools that I showed you before. But you go from here to here, and you'll see you no longer have a seam. And I just take my wet finger like this, and then it's all smooth. Look at the difference. Another way that you can do this is you can take your coil and make a really, really nice thin coil. And you can put this around this surface here. And this way, it actually thickens up the area it joins in, and it makes it more solid. And then when I move this, I go from down, from the middle to down, from the middle up. And then it's still a little bit of a mess. So again, take a little bit of a wet finger, very lightly rub, and there we go. Now if I want to get this edge back in here, I can just go in with this tool like this, and there. Perfect. Okay? So that is how you join the clay together. The surface must be smooth and refined. Any little cracks, boogers and stuff before it dries, you're not going to get them out later. So make sure that you do it now. Now, when these things dry, you have to know that when they're thick, they're nice and solid. Okay? If they're thin, it's paper. So if it's really thin, it will break easy. This does not break easy. This, if it's really thin, will break easy. So when you're adding things, if I'm adding something to this, if I want to add this, that's good. But if I want to add something like this, that thing's going to break really easy once it's dry. So make sure that you're using things that are thick enough that it won't go. The drying time is about 24 hours. You can tell if you feel the clay and it doesn't feel cold, you know that it's pretty much dry, of course, unless it's cold out. And then the other thing you need to know is it shrinks a little bit, just a little bit. Now, if your clay breaks, you've got a piece and it breaks off, like say you connected this and the whole thing's dry and this breaks off. You use Elmer's glue. It's paper, so it actually works. If you get water on this, once it's dry, it will come back to life and it will get mushy, so you have to be a little careful. Now, time to store it. Storage and cleanup of this clay. You need a bag. And you need to take all of the pieces and put them together. Because if all the pieces are together, they are really a lot less likely to dry out. The more thin and pieced up, the more air reaches the surface and the faster it dries. So I'm going to take this, put it in a nice lump, put it inside the bag, and then at this point, I'm going to squirt it 3 times. Ready? With the squirt, 1, 2, 3. That gets moisture in the bag so it stays nice and dry. Then I gotta get rid of this extra air, otherwise that water is not any good. I'm gonna get all that air out and then I'm going to seal it. It's kind of like anybody who's used those travel compression bags. Get the air out. All right? Seal the bag. Now to clear everything up, you have to wash all of these tools off with warm water. Otherwise, all these little clay boogers stay on and they'll get in other people's clay. Your surface, you need to just wipe off. This is paper and it's non-toxic, but you'll see it gets little things all over. So don't get it on the floor because it will make a white mess everywhere. And you're going to have to do 2 passes because this, you'll see even on my hand, even though it looks like it's dry, it's done, when it dries again, you'll see there's still white there, so you have to go again. And that is how to use paper clay. Good luck.